Now, Professor Mormino, a giant Ponzi scheme?
Well, I think you can look at this two ways. The first, named after Charles Ponzi in the 1920s, the idea of the confidence game, Bernie Madoff. There was no shortage of financial shenanigans in Florida. I was referring it to more as a metaphor, that since the 1950s, Florida has been attracting about 1,000 people every single day. 85 million tourists last year. Our entire structure, our tax structure, is built upon growth. And the mantra has always been, growth will pay for itself. No one ever really, I think, gave serious attention to the fact, what will happen when 1,000 people stop coming? And that's what I meant by the Ponzi scheme, that yesterday's homeowners will pay for today's newcomers. And the newcomers stopped coming about 2 years ago.
In this interesting piece in The New Yorker that uses your term, the Ponzi scheme, George Packer writes, only Nevada has a lower proportion of native residents than Florida, the state's growth machine not depending on higher education or high-paying professional jobs, but on real estate and sunshine.
Very true. We have no state income tax. Everything is dependent.
No state income tax.
No state. It's a constitutional amendment. We will probably never have a state income tax.
One of only 9 states that doesn't have income tax.
And about one of 3 Floridians is a native, second lowest in the union. Someone said the state license plate should be where everyone is from somewhere else. This has created great problems for the state in connecting. Making Floridians believe they have a sense of place here. And that's one of the great challenges, I think, to modern Florida, a sense of shared sacrifice and a commitment to the future.
Professor Mormino, describe how the crisis, the economic meltdown, has affected Florida in the last 2 years. I mean, you talk about it, in a sense, as being ground zero for the meltdown. Well,
it's true. I mean, it's no coincidence that when journalists from New Yorker, New York Times, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, they came to the Tampa Bay area, Dateline, Wesley Chapel in Pasco County, Cape Coral in Lee County, places like that. These are instant cities, places that were not even on a map 60 years ago, and they simply burst overnight. Largest city, in fact, on the Gulf Coast, south of Tampa, is Cape Coral now. It was 160,000 people a few years ago. It has something like 30,000 unsold homes. I may be lowballing it, in fact. But the people simply stopped coming, compounded by a national recession, a banking crisis. Retirees, the dependable source of new home ownership in Florida, retirees can't sell their home in Iowa or New Jersey. They can't come. So Florida has really taken a pummeling. Right now,
the actual descriptions of people throughout Florida, the foreclosures, the idea of Florida having been, well, governed by one Bush at the same time that the country was being governed by another Bush, how that impacted, the economic policies impacted where you are today here.
Well, I'm not sure you can blame it on any one individual. I mean, this is a systemic crisis. Floridians have themselves to blame in many ways for not demanding a more sensible tax structure. In some ways, the great crisis now is how do you recreate a Florida dream? I mean, Florida was founded upon the idea of a dream. It's a combination of the American dream at the larger level and the Florida dream, that you can come to Florida, you'll have a better life, at least better Februaries. In retirement, you can have dignity in old age, and Florida was cheap. Florida is no longer cheap. We have lots of environmental, economic problems, and I think one of the great challenges, and I think it could be a creative one, is how do we refashion a new dream? What will the new Florida dream be like? And I think America in general is also facing many of those challenges.
Can you talk more about what you feel needs to happen here?
Well, what needs to be happen, you know, as a historian, my objectives probably won't be happening. We need a more sensible tax structure. It's a very regressive tax structure founded upon growth and sales taxes. We tried a service tax a few years ago. That did not work out. For all purposes, we're not going to have an income tax, a state income tax, because it's a constitutional amendment. Half the legislature would have to ask for a vote, and then 50% of Floridians would have to vote themselves a state income tax. And part of this is that millions of Americans have sought kind of a refuge in Florida because it's cheap. For some, it's a tax haven. For others, it's a last stop, dignity in old age, and all those things. We're at a crossroads right now, and I think two things will happen. We will have a collective dialogue, and we'll have maybe a greener Florida. Or as what I fear is that, and you're already saying this in the state legislature, some politicians are arguing now that we will die without 1,000 newcomers arriving. We need to encourage even more growth. We have to get rid of growth management laws. We have to get rid of environmental standards. We have to dampen impact fees, things like that. And that's likely to happen because the legislature is a very conservative legislature.
Professor Mormino, the headline of your latest article was an interesting one. Apocalypse Florida, Florida's top historian files a report from the future.
Well, that article was written in jest, but like a lot of satire, there's a germ of truth there that Florida is very vulnerable right now. I mean, in some ways we've been lucky. We haven't had any serious hurricanes since 2004, although some would argue a good hurricane is exactly what we need with all that insurance money pouring into the state. But Florida, America, and the world all face crises of rising energy prices and global warming. Florida is impacted by those even more severe. We have a very shallow coastline. A 1-foot rise in sea level could be catastrophic for Florida. We were built with the automobile. We have relatively little mass transit here, so a spike in gas prices will affect Florida as well. So this apocalypse now idea is not just satirical. I mean, it's a lesson we should heed, perhaps, and prepare for the future. Yet this is a bewitching state. It pains me. This does not pleasure me to talk about Florida in such terms. It's a beautiful state. It's just extraordinarily diverse and vibrant. And I love the fact that millions of seniors have sought their place in the sunshine here. And that not long ago, a retired mailman from Chicago could come and live on the water in Florida. It is the American and Florida dream combined.
And the retirements, pension plans, how have they been affected because you've got this older state?
Well, that's why people aren't moving here at a rate of 1,000 a day. You know, you could have looked at the tea leaves maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And 4 or 5 years ago, something like 1,600 people were moving daily to Florida. But if you look closely, something like 600, 700 were leaving. And people joke there should be an expatriate Florida license plate. It's not what I thought it would be. You know, it's too humid, it's too many immigrants, it's too loud, it's spoiled, despoiled, all those things.
Your governor, Charlie Crist, has not joined with others like the New Orleans governor, Bobby Jindal, or Alaska Governor Sarah Palin in rejecting some or all of the stimulus money.
Right. Governor Crist is a moderate Republican. He's also a smart politician, and he knows Florida is desperate right now. And I think most Floridians applauded Governor Crist in that measure. I mean, I don't hear many people criticizing him except on the far right for taking stimulus money. Governor Crist, and I love Governor Crist, but he needs to step up and kind of have a frank talk, I think, with Floridians that we're in this crisis together. It's going to take shared sacrifice, collective pain, but the end will be a better Florida for everyone.
And the issue of immigrants, the difference in treatment between the Cubans who come here, the Haitians who come here, the threatened deportation of 30,000 Haitian immigrants. How do immigrants help shape Florida today?
Well, if we were having this discussion 30 years ago, we would be talking about Cubans. The 2000 census was revealing. For the first time, there are more non-Cuban Hispanics than Cubans. The great surge in immigration in the last 20, 25 years has been Mexican and Puerto Rican. They have reshaped Florida. They've energized Florida. Places that were staunchly Republican 15 years ago, such as Osceola County and Orange County in Central Florida, are now tilting Democratic. It's a pan-Hispanic immigration now. No county has been exempt from immigration. There are now more Hispanics in Florida than African Americans. Historically, there were times in the late